Welcome to Historica Reasons. We bring you amazing stories from history. Subscribe and enjoy the video. Sleep deprivation, dictatorships, wars. Prisoners were not allowed to sleep for days, leaving them weak and broken. Their bodies grew exhausted while their minds slipped into confusion and terrifying hallucinations. Freezing experiments. World War II victims were placed in icy water or freezing weather. While doctors observed their suffering, many died from organ failure as cruel tests continued without mercy. Bamboo. Torture. Ancient medieval bamboo shoots were placed under victims and left to grow into their bodies. The sharp plant pierced the skin slowly, causing hours of unbearable pain. Poisonous gas experiments. World War II prisoners were exposed to deadly chemical gases in sealed chambers. These experiments tested weapons, killing people in agonizing ways while their deaths were studied. Sterilization, torture, 20th century. Nazi regime. Men and women from targeted groups were operated on without anesthesia. The goal was to stop them from ever having children, leaving them scarred and broken. Biological weapons experiments. World War II. Unit 731 victims were infected with plague, cholera, and anthrax with no treatment. Their endless suffering was studied to develop biological weapons for war. Iron Maiden. Middle Ages. A coffin lined with spikes trapped victims inside. As it closed, the sharp points pierced their bodies, leaving them to bleed slowly to death. Bronze Bull. Ancient Greece prisoners were locked inside a metal bull and roasted alive over flames. Their screams echoed through the horns, turning pain into a horrifying sound. Pair of anguish. Middle Ages. A pear-shaped device was forced into the mouth or body and expanded. It ripped tissues apart, leaving victims in agony until they collapsed. A heavy vice was placed on the head and tightened slowly. Bones cracked, jaws shattered, and the victim endured pain until death came. Thumbscrew. Middle Ages and Renaissance. A small screw device was clamped onto fingers or thumbs. As it tightened, bones cracked and joints shattered, leaving victims screaming in pain. Buried alive. Torture. Ancient and military dictatorships. Prisoners were forced underground with no air or escape. The slow suffocation brought terror, panic, and the agony of waiting for death. Breast ripper. Middle Ages. This metal tool was used on women's breasts, tearing skin and flesh apart. It caused permanent mutilation and unbearable pain before death. Iron chair. Middle Ages. Nazi regime. The victim was tied to a chair covered with spikes or blades. As they sat, their body was torn and pierced until they bled out. Tuskegee syphilis study. 1932 to 1972. USA. African American men with syphilis were denied medicine to watch the disease progress. They suffered for years while researchers ignored a known cure. Knee splitter. Middle Ages. Sharp metal spikes were pressed into the knees. Slowly tightened, the device split joints apart, leaving victims crippled for life. Head shaving punishment. World War II. Women accused of helping enemies had their heads shaved in public. It was meant to shame and humiliate them before their communities. Crushing torture. Medieval war times. Heavy stones or iron were placed on a victim's body. Bones shattered under the weight, and the pressure slowly squeezed life out of them. The rack. Middle Ages and English Civil War victims were stretched on a frame until limbs dislocated, joints tore apart, and bones cracked while screams filled the chamber. Spanish tickler. Middle Ages. A metal claw was dragged across the victim's body. Flesh was torn away piece by piece, leaving only blood and wounds. Heretic, fork, Middle Ages. A metal-pronged device was strapped between the chin and chest. It stopped victims from speaking or resting, leaving them in constant agony. Flamethrower. Torture. 20th century victims were burned alive by blasts of fire. The flames destroyed their skin instantly while fear and shock consumed them. Genetic selection. Experiments. Nazi regime doctors forced breeding and blood experiments to create a pure race. Prisoners became unwilling subjects, often left disfigured or dead. Simulated execution. 20th century prisoners were led to believe they were about to die. The fear of death broke their minds, even without killing them. Vivisection. World War II. Unit 731 victims were cut open alive without anesthesia. Their organs and suffering were studied, as if they were nothing more than test animals. Pressure, chamber, torture. Cold War prisoners were locked in sealed chambers with changing air pressure. Their bodies swelled, burst veins, and left them in unspeakable pain. Judas cradle. Middle Ages. The victim was forced to sit on a pointed seat. Their body weight drove the sharp edge inside, causing slow injuries and death. Waterboarding. 20th century prisoners were tied down and water poured over their faces. The suffocating feeling of drowning made them break in terror. Linky. Death by 1,000 cuts. Imperial China victims were cut slowly across the body, starting with non-lethal wounds. Piece by piece, they suffered until life finally slipped away. Pincers and tongs. Middle Ages. Heated iron tongs were used to tear flesh from the body. Fingers, ears, and even genitals were ripped apart in burning agony. Meat hooks. Torture. Middle Ages. Large hooks were pushed into the victim's flesh, usually the back or shoulders. They were then hung in the air, tearing muscle and bone. Enema. Torture. Inquisition. Dictatorships. Harmful substances were forced into the body through enemas. It caused unbearable pain, poisoning, and deep humiliation. V-shaped torture device. Dictatorships. Prisoners were tied in a bent position inside a V-shaped frame. The body strained until organs and joints gave out. Communist China experiments. 20th century. Political prisoners were used for brutal drug and surgery tests. They endured extreme pain while doctors studied their breaking points. Iron feet. Middle Ages. Iron shoes filled with nails were strapped onto victims. As pressure increased, their bones shattered and movement became impossible. Electric shocks. 20th century current was applied to sensitive body parts like genitals and tongue. It caused unbearable pain, burns, and lasting nerve damage. Chinese. Water torture. Middle Ages. Cold water dripped onto the forehead for hours. The slow rhythm drove victims into madness and fear. Syringe. Torture. 20th century victims were injected with poisons or hallucinogens. These substances caused pain, confusion, and sometimes slow death. Chastity belt. Medieval Europe. A metal belt was locked around the genitals, often with spikes inside. It caused wounds, infections, and was used as control or punishment. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to leave a like to support our work and share your thoughts in the comments.